Okay, folks, I think we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everybody else tonight. My name is Joseph Baker. I'm the founder and lead organizer of I Believe Birmingham, who has been organizing this series of debates across the city for the last 6 weeks or so. Our purpose in doing this was to try to help the electorate become more informed about the candidates and what was at stake here in local elections, to try to get the candidates together, to get everybody informed of their views, and our biggest goal is to hopefully encourage more participation in the civic process. Throughout the last election, our attendance in Birmingham was abysmally low. We had an average of 20% turnout of registered voters across the city. So this was one of our thoughts for try to help encourage more turnout. And one of the things that we want you to do is to leave here and go out and try to recruit more people to go out and vote. It is imperative that we participate in a democracy to make it function well. And as people who were obviously passionate enough to be here this evening, you are the perfect people to go out and talk to your friends and neighbors to get them out. Tonight we're going to lead off with our Board of Education candidates. Hopefully our council candidates will come. They've confirmed, so we'll see if they manage to show. But we'll go with them for about an hour or so, and then assuming that we get a council candidate, we'll bring them up and go from there. Our moderators tonight, I'll let them introduce themselves and they'll take it from here.
My name's Ian Hoppy. I'm a writer and video producer for AL.com. Very happy to be here this evening.
My name is Ariel Worthy. I'm a writer for the Birmingham Times.
So I guess we're going to start off. We'll just go right down the line, starting with you, Mr. Womack. We'll have 2 minutes each. Try and keep the 2 minutes. I think Marie is going to give you all kind of a timer to watch. So would you just say why you're running and what you hope to accomplish?
Okay, great. Let me say good evening to everyone. Thank you for coming out to absolutely hear from the candidates that is vying to sit on your Board of Education. I'm Antoine Womack. I'm a candidate for District 8. Born and raised here in Birmingham, Alabama. My purpose for running for the Board of Education is for one purpose and one purpose only, is to begin to bridge the gap between the lack of transparency that takes place between the community and central office. Another reason why I'm running is because for the past 12 years, we have seen a board member that have sat and have kept the community disinvolved when it comes down to the process. I think that the only way that we're going to change the status quo as relates to a failed school system or anything as relates to anything failing, we first got to educate the community on what their role is in our school system. That's something that I have done being an advocate election year and off election years, letting the community know that this is your school system, these are your tax dollars, this is how you get involved. But the only way we got to do that, we first have to make sure that the community is connected. And when they're connected, that they understand that these are their tax dollars and these are their schools.
All right. Mr. Silman.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is D. Tyrone Silman. I am a candidate, as you know, here for the Board of Education seat as well. The reason that I'm running to the Board of Education is simply this. I want to put our kids first. I think oftentimes over the years, most people that have sat in the seat of board members have not thought about the children in their decision making. I'm simply going to do that. Why am I choosing to run? Primarily, I'm a parent first. My daughter is a student in the Birmingham City School District. This is her 3rd year in the school district as well. I'm very, very hands-on at the school. I've worked in a number of capacities. I think if you look at my background, my education and experience, I'm definitely qualified to sit on this board. I believe education, however, is the greatest equalizer, or can be the greatest equalizer in a child's life. I just believe that with the great education that children will be afforded to overdo or forego any task placed before them. By having a good education, in our communities, I think we will solve a lot of the issues that we have as it relates to crime and some other things. I think a lot of that is dovetail based on, you know, not having an educated children throughout our school district. I'm looking very much so to, you know, joining the school board and doing a lot of things that that are different, but there are 4 primary reasons that I'm going to talk to you about tonight before the debate is over in regards to what I intend to do on the school board. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Hi. My name is Sonia Smith, and I also am running for the District 8 seat on the Board of Education. I'm running because I want our school and our system to be the best that it can possibly be, and I know that I have the ability to help make that possible. I'm an educator. I've taught high school, and I've written curriculum. Currently, I manage a federal grant where with the Affordable Care Act, helping people get signed up. So I manage a $1 million budget. I manage staff. I write policy and I write grants. And all of that is exactly what it means to be a Board of Ed representative. Writing policy and managing or overseeing our superintendent. The additional thing that you have with me is that I do have experience as an educator. And that experience allows me to know what our educators need and their board representative. I know the importance of having a representative that will be an advocate for you, that will have an open line of communication with you, and that will be as transparent as possible. And that's my pledge to you as the Board of Ed representative.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Patricia Bozeman Henderson. I've lived in the Western area for 24 years. I've worked at Jones Valley Middle School for 15 years. I taught special needs. I know what the school system needs. First of all, we have to go in there and we're going to have to work with our superintendent. The superintendent is going to have to let the teachers know what she needs from them. Then we get that teachers from what they know going to the student. All of us up here say we love our children, and I think we all do. I know we all do love our children. I feel that I'm real qualified because I worked in the system and I've also loved my neighborhood. I want to bring the old school back. I want to bring our PTA back. That's where we're going to, first of all, start. If we get our parents back into the PTA and get them involved in the school, then I don't see there should be a bigger problem. But you got to go into the community. I've been in my community for 24 years. I know my community because I live there. I've had children there. I was PTA president of several schools. I feel I know what the school system needs. I feel I could be the one that give it to them. I have been on many boards around Birmingham. I know how to look at dockets. I know how to go through the budget. And I believe, with God Almighty, I'll be able to help with the budget. If we get the right team members on our school board, we'll be able to bring our school board up to par. That's what it's going to take. But it's going to take parents. That's the first of all. You're going to have to take us parents to go back into the school system. We're going to need parents like I used to do with our school guard. I used to get out early so I could be out there when they got out of school and help the children go across the street, because we had so many incidents that happened with children getting hurt. We parents going to have to get back in the school system to help our children. There are so many different things that we can help our teachers with. Okay, I got started. I'm passionate about how I feel about this position. I'm sorry.
So we can start down on your end again.
Okay, great.
We want each candidate to take 2 minutes to answer this question. What is the most pressing issue in the school system today?
I feel the most pressing issues is making sure that we get the technology that we're needed now in the school system. The learning for the children. Right now they don't have books, but they use a lot of computer. And I even know it from at church dealing with 5-year-olds. They get my telephone and they can find a game in church. If we give them computers right now at 5 years old, what do you think we could do with them as they get older? So we got to make sure we give them the resources that they need right now at a young age. Also, I even learned by working at my church with a lot of children in the 6th and 7th grade, cursive writing. I don't even know that a lot of parents realize they don't even do cursive writing anymore. They don't even know how to do a signature. They print it now. We got to teach them the basic first. And once we teach our children the basic, we're going to have stars. And I want to sit on that board to make sure when the superintendent let us know what the school system needs, I want to be there. I want to work with her to make sure our children get all the education that is needed for them. But we got to start them young. And if we start them young with computer and all the resources that they need, we're going to have scholars. And I honestly feel that.
I feel the most pressing issue with our schools today is that we need to educate the entire student. So we look at education in terms of our alphabet, and we look at it in terms of math. But we also need to look and see what else is going on with our students. We know that, we talk about reading issues that our students have. But if a student is living in a stressful situation, if a student is coming to school and they're hungry or tired, they're not going to learn. So we have to look at our entire student and make sure that we're giving the proper amount of money to our schools so that we can properly address all the issues that are happening with our students.
I feel that the overall goal of education is assisting children in developing knowledge and skills needed for college career and life. When a student graduates from high school, in many cases we feel or we expect them to be able to do a lot of various different things, to read, to write, to do a lot of things in math, sciences, and all of that. But I feel truly that in order for us, and what's most pressing with our kids, before we can get to the kids, one of the things that I feel is definitely needed, and the most pressing thing over the years has been, we've got to stabilize our leadership. It's just that simple. In order for us to take our school district to the next dimension, we've got to stabilize our leadership. We've got to undergird the current superintendent, provide her with the necessary tools so that she can take our school district to the next level. In so doing that, what I feel is necessary from the superintendent, she needs the support of a board. The board needs to support the superintendent, the teachers, administrators, and the principals in all of the schools are the experts. So all these folks has to come together strategically to move our school district in the next dimension.
One thing that is very, very, very pressing at this moment, just because I've been there and I've seen it, attendance. We got to make sure that we are promoting the message and letting parents know how important it is for our students to be ready to be in the classroom day one. We cannot do anything else as relates to making sure our teachers have the resources that they need, that the principals are providing the leadership in the schools if we don't have students in that day one. One way that I think that we can tackle that issue is that we have to begin to work with our businesses, our community leaders, and making sure that our message is strong, how important it is that if your child don't get in on day one, they have already missed 1 day of classroom instructional time. We've always had that problem here in Birmingham City Schools. One thing that I believe that we have to do is that we have to make sure that our superintendent is presenting a message to the public that we are ready for our children day one, and that our children will learn, and that teachers are passionate and prepared. And I believe that if we get that established and we present that for the public, everything else will fall in place.
Number 3, what will you do as a board member specifically to improve the system as you do this today?
All right. First thing that has to happen is that that's a tricky question, but it's realistic. One thing that I want the public to understand is that I am one vote. I one vote. And so that means that Antoine Womack, number 1, has to go in and be prepared to listen, be prepared to look at our current challenges, and then not only that, we have to be prepared to hear out the superintendent. The superintendent operates the day-to-day operation of the system. The board just handles the personnel and all that. So one thing that I would do is hear out from our superintendent first, see what's her vision. After I see what's her vision, then we'll look at our budget and see where the money is to make sure that that vision is produced. Another thing that Antoine will do that I think is very important that I've already been doing is making sure that I continue to build my relationship with the key players that move and make things happen in Birmingham City Schools. That means our CSFO, our curriculum person, all those. Antoine Womack already have a relationship with those people. And I believe that come day one, that I will have the opportunity to go sit down with them and say, now guess what? This is what we have to offer you. Let's make it happen for our children.
I think most of you have heard me over the last month in our debates and all the times that we spent. I talked about 4 primary things that I'd like to see happen and what I would implement to assist our school district. Number 1, I've already said I want to help stabilize our leadership. The second thing I want to do is I'm an advocate for teachers, for principals, for the administrators throughout the district. I want to be a voice for them. I just believe that we need to help them with a lot of, because every school, a lot of issues that they face daily, but every school has its own unique challenges. So I want to be an advocate for all of the people amongst the schools, to the teachers, the principals, and the administrators, with providing them a lot of professional development on an ongoing basis. The third thing I really want to do is I want to improve the technology for the students. I've said oftentimes that our students need laptops and computers coming to school as well as leaving school. And lastly, what I want to do is I have a very robust and a very diverse background. If you look at all the things I've done throughout my career, I've mentored, coached, I've even taught in the Birmingham City School District. But I believe that I'm the guy that has the ability, has the confidence, has a lot of the relationships throughout the community that I believe will improve our entire school district, from the business leaders to the merchants, to the neighborhood leaders, to the associations, to the mayor's office, to the council's office, throughout the entire city of Birmingham. I'm the guy that has those relationships. I'm the guy that's currently working in those capacities already today. I'm the guy that strategically can put partnerships together to give back to our schools, to move our schools to the right place.
So one thing that has been expressed is that our students need exposure. And part of the vision of the Birmingham City Schools is that our students are prepared to be successful in a global society. I'm actually working with the Birmingham Sister City Commission, and we're partnering with Brown Elementary this year. We're piloting a program. So where students will have a passport that the arts department has designed, and those students will take that passport around to various cultural activities around the city. And they'll get a sticker for having participated, and at the end of the year, they'll all come together and they'll have a school-wide event sharing the information that they've learned and trying different cuisine from the different nationalities. That's the type of thing that helps our students to be prepared for the global society. Our students need to have exposure so that they can be successful and they can be competitive once they graduate.
I want to work with the superintendent of the school. That's the first thing. I don't want my role, like some people's role, have gotten me stuck. As a board member, you got to know your rules. You can't go into a school system and tell a teacher anything. When we see something that's not right, we have to take it to the superintendent. And we let the superintendent handle all of that business there. But what I want to do is, I go back again, I want to take it to the community. I've lived there for 24 years. I've worked in my neighborhood. I've done different activities. Applebee's is up there because of the neighborhood. The Cross Place is there because of the neighborhood. And the police department is there because of the neighborhood. I want to get the neighborhood back involved. That's my main goal. I want to bring back to you what we're deciding, what we're thinking about on the school board. If we let the community know exactly what's going on, we will not have a lot of problems. Because as a board member, you go to your meetings, your neighborhood meetings, and you let them know what's going on at the school, they'll know what's going on, and they can get involved. That's our number one thing. We need to get the neighborhood back involved. And if we get the neighborhood back involved by letting them know what's going on, we won't have a problem. We also got to get our resources together and find out exactly what the school system needs. Once we get our resources together and we find out what the school system needs, then we'll be able to build all of our schools up to the part that is needed for. Thank you.
Ms. Henderson,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on charter schools?
My thoughts on charter school, I've been following that for a little while. And to answer your question is, charter school can be good and charter school can be bad, and I'm gonna give you my reasons. When I say it could be good, if a parent have a child that's being bullied in school, you can take them out to public school and put them in a charter school. They will be surrounded with a lot of care, and you don't have that many children in a classroom. That's one thing. But when that child go to the charter school, it's going to hurt our system. And I have too many friends that are teachers where it's going to hurt. Your child go to a charter school. The money from the state goes straight to the charter school. If that child's so bad, or that child got to be put out of charter school and has to go to a public school, that money stays with the charter school. If a lot of our children get out of our public school system and wind up going to a charter school, what do you think it's going to do to our system? Our system's going to lose a lot of money. Teachers going to lose their job. So we got to think about this very good, very closely when we're talking about charter school. Charter school is good on one behalf, and on the other half it's not, because it's going to mess up our public school system. And I do not want to see a lot of my friends as educators when they got their doctor's degree, their master's degree, to teach in the public school, and they won't have a job. So with charter school, to answer your question, no ma'am, I don't want them to come into our system to mess up the public side of it, the state side of it, the money part of it, because that's what's going to keep our school system going. It's the money side that we get from the state.
I personally am not a fan of charter schools. I actually taught at one for a little bit, so I know how they operate, and I left because I was not a fan of some of the things that were happening there. I feel that with charter schools, while they help the students that are there in that school, I feel that they don't do anything for the greater good of our system. The 200 or so students that are there have that advantage, but we have several students that are left behind. And if we want our entire system to be good, then we need to put in the resources, and we need to provide our teachers with the support that they need so that our schools can be the best that they can be. If we've done everything we can do, then I say, okay, let's look at something else. But we haven't done that. We haven't provided our schools with the resources they need, that we need to resolve. We need to go to a charter school system.
Well, one of the things that I did prior to even announcing this, I've been, hearing a lot of discussions about what charter schools are and what they are not. So what I did was I scheduled appointments to meet with people that are currently, working with charter schools, and obviously met with people on another perspective that really disagree. And just as anything, charter schools has their pros and its cons. Okay, but for me, what it all boils down to is how does it best fit a school district or a school system. I personally do not feel that charter schools is what's best for Birmingham Public Schools. So in that regard, I'll just say I'm not in favor of charter schools in Birmingham at this particular point in time.
Okay, well, Mr. Womack stepped out to get a drink of water, but we're just going to move on. So last question. What would you want the state legislature or state board of education to change to improve Birmingham school system? And start with you. Start with you. Yes, sir.
Well, when you look at what the state is doing, years ago they had to take over and come in and they, fix the schools or try to create some things. But the thing that I would like the state to do is to open up the lines of communication so that they give home rule to the school district that is, kind of running their own school district. I think the state in and of itself needs to really just handle their business, and I really feel that the state needs to, you know, visit DC a little bit more to try to release some federal dollars so that our school system can be better funded. So from the state perspective, I just believe that the state needs to fight and bid more for our schools throughout the entire state to help, you know, with the funding of it. So that's what I'll say.
Smith?
So we have a number of non-educators that are writing policy, educational policy. That the state needs to, we need to have our teachers, which are our experts in education, at the table writing that policy. If you've never taught in a classroom, how can you know what is needed? How can you properly write policy? So that we need, our state needs to have more educators writing policy so that our schools can be much better.
I would like for the state to look at our curriculum better. I would like for our state to look at our curriculum better. First of all, when we looking at every year after our students take their tests, we always have a problem stating that some of our classes wasn't good. We did lower scores. First of all, they need to make sure when they're looking at our scores that we get everything right, because during that summer, and this is the truth, during the summer when the state come out and say that we at a percentage lower, we find out that's a different percentage, but then you don't know the accuracy that hurts the school system, that hurts the children when they thought they have done good. I would just like for the school system to make sure they're doing their job, making sure their accuracies are right when they're giving out our report. Because when you're talking about the education, we got some smart children here, but we don't get credit for it. And that really upsets me, because the principals and everybody get on the television and the school system talk about all the grades that they have had, and then they didn't get the right curriculum correct. That makes them feel real bad. During the summer, the children having a bad summer because they're here in school that went down. The state need to get themselves together. And when they get ready to give our scores right, give us our right scores. One while they said we had the worst school system there was, and then we found out only 13 schools had did the failing score. But then look what the hardship that they did at the beginning with the teachers. The teachers standing around saying, I know I did my best. I know I taught this. I know I went by the right curriculum. And then here comes the state giving them the bad report. Then later on, after we fight forward, we find out we didn't do that bad. But the children have already heard that bad report. The children looking at the fact, well, my teacher didn't teach me right. See, we need to get that straightened out with the school system first, with the state. Make sure you all have y'all ducks in order before y'all start giving us these bad reports. That's one thing I don't like about the state. They give us bad report, and it happens every year. If you think about it, it happens every year. They're giving our school system a bad report, then they have to turn around and say, oh, we made a mistake. But look at the damage you have done. It's just like with the exit exam. They put too many of our students out there on the street, because I work in municipal court, and I see our students went through the 12th grade. When they went through the 12th grade, they thought they did good, but some people can't take a test. And I talked to too many young men and some women, and they said they couldn't take a test real good. But yet still, they made their grade through, but one test put them out there on the street saying they got to go get their GED. A lot of this needs to be changed, which they did change, which I'm glad of, but look at the damage that it caused.
Mr. Womack.
Yes.
So we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do 2-minute kind of closing statements, and then we can all go outside and cool off a little bit. For 5 minutes before the council starts. So sorry for the heat here. I think we're trying to get it cooled down. What would you want the state legislature or board of education to get done to improve Birmingham?
I have a question. Can I go back and answer the question concerning charter schools? Because I did not answer that.
Yes.
If that's fine.
You walked up with that. Sorry, yeah, go ahead and do the charter. Sorry.
Charter schools is very unique here in Alabama. One thing that I think the public need to understand about charter schools is that the way that the schools are set up is based off a charter. Basically means that these schools have the ability to set it up however they want to, and they get the opportunity to teach whatever they want to in these schools without any accountability. Charter schools in Alabama have been written in a business format that is for profit and that uses public dollars to educate our students. Basically means that when the students leave Birmingham City Schools, the dollars follow them. One thing that are facts about charter schools in Alabama is that the teachers are not required to be certified by the Alabama Department of Education. Public administrators in the schools are not required to have any classroom experience. Only thing they're required to do is to take a test and to pass some classes and have a high school diploma. Not only that, those teachers are also, and administrators are also, the schools are required to pay bare minimum of state requirement for a teacher. So I'm basically saying this is that charter schools is nothing but another level of unaccountability when it comes down to the problem. No, we don't need charter schools. The only thing we need to do is take a lot of the heavy regulations off public schools, allow the teachers to teach curriculum and not a standardized test. Not only that, another thing that has happened that charter schools want to do is they want to come into our community and they want to tell us that our schools are failing. No, one thing that Birmingham City Schools has to do to make sure our message is sound towards the charter schools is to let them know that we are keeping the same statistic and data that you are, but our statistics say another thing. One thing I will do is that I'll make sure that as being your next board member, that I will stand clearly against charter schools.
And one more thing, what would you do, what would you want the state legislature or state board of education to do to improve Birmingham City Schools?
The first thing that has to happen is that the State Department of Education, number one, have to realize that Birmingham City Schools is not their enemy. We are not their enemy. Being down at the Board of Education meeting, being a member, a proud member of AFT, I have went to Montgomery and have watched how it is that they will continuously take fake numbers, take a fake profile of Birmingham City Schools and use it against us. One thing that we have to do is that we have to make sure that we are showing our legislators and showing the Alabama State Department of Education that we can keep a superintendent. They come with us because guess what? We don't have a chief to protect us. And the Indians all over the place. So one thing we have to do is that we have to make sure that guess what? That we go down to Montgomery and lobby for our own schools with our superintendent and say, hey, you're not going to put us, you're not going to tell us how we need to run our school system. Not only that, one thing that I think that we can do in Birmingham, because we got enough money in the budget, is we can tell the state, take your money back, and you have no say in our schools.
So I think we're going to take
We're gonna take a couple of audience questions.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the candidates?
One question. How much education should anyone serving on the school board have?
We'll start with Ms. Henderson. I'm Patricia Busby Henderson. I have a high school diploma and I graduated from Phillip High School in '79. I went on further and got my social worker degree from Lawson State, and I have a social worker degree. And I went on and got a Bachelor of Science degree from Miles College with pre-law. I also went to UAB, but I wasn't there but a year, and I had to come back home because my children was getting ready to go to college, and we couldn't afford my college and hers. So I do have a year with my master's degree.
I have my bachelor's degree from Birmingham Southern in music, and I have a master's degree from Louisiana State University.
Before I go any further, that was
think
not the
you
question.
asked
Saying the question.
That was not the question.
Your question
The question
was,
was, how much education should someone serving on the board have?
According
What is the minimum?
According to state law, a minimum for qualification is a high school diploma.
So you think it ought to just be high school?
No, ma'am, I'm not saying, no, you asked me, what was the minimum?
No, I asked you how much. You think.
Okay, so I didn't,
So to clarify, you're asking how much education do they think a Board of Education representative should have? Okay. Ms. Henderson, we'll start with you again.
I think if you want to be on the Board of Education and you know that there's some teacher that has a doctorate and master's degree, you should have at least more than a high school diploma because you're sitting on that board and you're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to make decisions with everyone's lives. you should at least, I think you should at least have more than a high school diploma. I think you should at least have a BS degree, close up to a master or even a doctorate degree. But it should be more than a high school diploma, because you got to realize you're sitting there making decisions. You make a decision, you're going through budgets. You got to know how to read a budget. I'm on the board right now and we were dealing with $20 million. I've been on the board before we had to deal with a lot of money. You got to know how to read a contract. If someone giving you a contract and you don't know what the words are in the contract, you're not going to be able to make a valid decision on what to say about this contract. If you don't know how to add and they're giving you a budget, how are you going to add that budget together if you don't know math? So I think you should have a very high education. I don't care about the streets and you done learned a lot of things. People can hear a lot of things and they know a lot of things. But if you don't know how to read, and we sitting on the board of a school system, and you don't know how to look at a budget, you don't know how to look at a document, and you are not going to be able to tell the difference when you're sitting there and you're talking, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to the school system. I don't think that's fair to some of the teachers who have already got their doctorate degree, or their master's, or their BS degree. I don't think that's fair. You want to sit there with just a high school diploma? I think you should have something higher.
I think you should have a bachelor's degree, personally. A bachelor's degree gives you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've worked with budgets or that a bachelor's degree shows that you have completed something, that you have gone through, that you can follow instructions, that you can complete tasks. A bachelor's degree does make a difference.
Well, my take is simple. If you want to practice law, you have to go to law school. If you want to be a physician, you have to go to medical school. We're talking about education here, folks. We're talking about the future of our children. We're talking about education. If you're representing education, you must be educated. It's just that simple to answer your question.
You know, I sit here and I listen. It's so funny that all three of my opponents have bachelors and masters and all of that. One thing that I believe, and everybody know Antoine Womack didn't go to college. Antoine Womack didn't do any of that. But one thing that I did do is that I showed the average individual that want to serve in public office. And one thing that I do want to clarify is some of the best politicians here in Birmingham didn't even go to college. But guess what? They did a great job. If you build a relationship with the community, and not only that, but if you build a relationship with the right people that know what's going on, guess what they can do? They can teach you. Our current board member here in District 8 don't have a college degree, but she sat there and guess what, have made some good decisions. And so one thing that I don't want to happen is that just because an individual does not have a college degree, I don't want to look upon that, guess what, that just because you don't have this degree, that you can't sit on the board. That's why we have workforce development. You have individuals that have strong trades. And guess what the job market is doing right now? They're hiring them quicker with that trade than the college degrees. So I want to be that board member that advocate for our students and for our employees that, guess what, that are at the lower totem pole that don't have that degree. To let them know you have the same options and you have the same ability to make it in this system like anybody else does.
There you go. The gentleman in the blue shirt.
It's actually to you, Womack. It's kind of a twofold question. The first part is, earlier you mentioned about attendance and how big attendance is, and especially I know a lot of funding gets determined by attendance. You mentioned something about working with your local business leaders, but could you go a little bit more in detail about how you're going to incorporate getting the business to help get the kids to actually go to school, as well as second part is schools are, we know, underfunded. They're always cutting money from the budget. And you said tell the state they can keep their money. So how would we supplement that loss?
That's a good
finance?
That's a good question. Let me go back to the first question that you asked about attendance. One thing that has to happen that Birmingham City Schools has not done good about is getting out there early enough to get the parents energized about day one. Not only that, one way that we can get the businesses involved, and our current council, Councilor Hoyt, has departed with a purpose. Guess what? That's centered around getting people energized about education. One thing we have to do is that the board and the superintendent has to sit at the table with business leaders, major business leaders here in our city, and say, partner with us and promoting this message of how important, if they want to get a job at your corporation, how day one can affect the rest of the school year. So how Antoine Womack, being the next board member, will work that is that the first thing I plan to do is to come back to the district with the superintendent and invite business leaders and everybody out to first talk about how important it is that they get involved and encouraging people to get involved in the schools, number one. Being a part of the PTA, I found that it's very important that the reason why parents don't go to the PTA is because, number one, they don't even like the school that their child goes to. So they ain't finna come participate in that. Their next thing is getting the child up out of school, taking them somewhere else. And so I believe that our message has to be strong. Unity has to be in place. And not only that, we have to put a front before the community that, guess what, that we are not going to mislead their children. We're going to give them the best. Then the second question is about...
You said that to tell the state...
Yes, I'm going to answer that. Now, when I say that, currently right now, the city of Birmingham allocates roughly about $2.4 million now towards education. A lot of our funding comes from the state. So anytime an entity gives you a lot of money, guess what they're going to want to do? They're going to want to come in and have a lot of control. I believe that if we, number one, and which has already been happening, but I think that it has to be some consistency in it. If we, number one, come sit at the table with our mayor and our city council and show some stability within communication, number one, as relates to education. We haven't had that big talk about how we're going to really fund our schools. It is so sad that in other municipalities throughout the state of Alabama, that they fund their system more money than Birmingham does. I believe that if we sit down with, like I said, other elected officials, set some accountability measures, and say that, guess what, as the mayor and the city council, on the way Board of Education, we're going to give you more money. You got to show us some meat as to what you currently have that you're using that right. And I believe that if the system does that, and if the city does that, then we can have some independence in some way. But I'm not totally saying that, guess what, that we don't need the state, but I'm saying that what it is that we have to show the state we can stand on our own 2 feet too.
I have a question just about the policy. Do any of the candidates know the current policy, and which one are y'all, one that you would be passionate about changing?
Let's start with Ms. Smith.
Current policy regarding
The Birmingham school system, just any policy that they have in place as of now?
That you would like to change?
That one that you would like to change. Do you know the policy, and you know anyone that you would like to change that you feel that needs change?
Yeah.
It
So
could be a yes, and then it could be something that you want, a policy you want to see, or something.
I'll take a jab at that. I don't view that as being a fair question, but I'll make an attempt to answer it. And I say that because I don't think we have a policy issue. I think what we have is a people issue. People are the people that kind of handle the policies and apply them, appropriately. So I don't feel that it's a policy necessary issue. It's more of a people issue, if that makes sense.
So you're saying that if people aren't implementing the
Well,
policy?
it's just having the proper people doing the right things. Yes, the right people in the right seats on the bus, for lack of better term.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Sylvan on that. I think one thing that has to happen is that board members need to understand why they write policies and what does the policies affect and whom do they affect. A lot of them write policies, and guess what? For so many years, the board has broken their own policies. And so, number one, they need to understand what policies are. And I believe that if we get through the Alabama Association School Board, they give training on proper policies and all that. So I think board training would be helpful towards making good policy decisions with the fit our classrooms.
So to that, the state does offer school board training that goes through the policies and the policies and procedures manual of the board. And I have, read thoroughly the manual and am familiar with the policy, well, the procedures of the board. But as a board member, we listen to what our superintendent has to say, and we, as recommendations for policy.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up and do closing statements. If y'all are okay with that, it's pretty hot in here. Yeah, I think. We had to get to the council. So I guess let's start, since we haven't done this yet, with Mr. Silman. We'll do 2 minutes closing.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Again, my name is D. Tyrone Silman. I am excited about what lies ahead of us. I feel that I'm the best candidate here, primarily because I have the background, the education, the experience to be an asset to our current school board. I told you what my platform is. I've stuck to that platform. Number one, as I said before, I want to support our current leadership. Number two, I want to be an advocate for teachers, for principals, for leaders throughout the district. Number three, I want to provide our students better technology. And finally, the last thing I want to do is, I'm the guy that can strategically put partnerships in place to give back to our schools, to undergird and support them financially with all of the tools necessary to take them to the next dimension. So I'm excited about what lies ahead, and on August 22nd, please vote D. Tyrone Silman to be your next school board representative.
Yes, Ms. Smith, please.
Okay. All right. So again, Sonia Smith for school board. Again, the basic role of a school board member is to be an administrator, and the benefit again that I have is of being an educator as well. As your school board representative, every decision that I make will have your students, your children at the forefront. Everything that I do will be for what's best for our students and what's best for our schools. My pledge is to be an advocate for you and an advocate for our teachers, to have an open line of communication, and again, to be as transparent as possible. I want you to be able to see your board through a clear lens. And that's what I pledge to do as your board representative. But there are two things that I would need from you. Our schools need your support. We need our communities to help build our schools, to help make them better. If you're involved already, great, bring a friend along. Get your churches involved. Make sure that we have the sponsorship and we have the mentorship opportunities for our students so that we can work together to help build our schools. And then I also ask that you vote for me, Sonia Smith, on August 22nd.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to us as we tell our reasons as to why we want to serve on the Board of Education. I have seen how it is that we have some of the best educators, some of the best administrators, some of the best support staff, paraprofessionals. But one thing they've never had is they've never had anyone to think about them. Antoine Womack, being in this school system, have experienced what it is when a child is left behind. One that have, guess what, came out of high school, went back and got my education. It's time to have somebody that sits on the board that understands the current issues of what parents are facing. Antoine Womack can sit on that board and can tell others who have not experienced what it is to make sure we have resources in place to continue to improve our dropout rate. If you never dropped out of high school, you don't know how to, guess what, to relate to that. Not only that, when it comes down to understanding policies and procedures, if you don't go to the school board meeting to even know how the meetings even ran through Robert Rules of Order, then guess what? You wouldn't know. Not only that, if you don't know who to go to when it comes down to knowing how to make sure that you allocate money in the right place, you're not going to be good. So I say that to say this, is that Antoine Womack has been there, election season and not election season. I advocated with AFT when the public asked for local representation for superintendent. I went to Montgomery and I fought with our union to make sure that Birmingham City Schools had a voice against charter schools. I'm asking you to give me an opportunity to continue as not an elected official, but as a public servant to do it on the Birmingham Board of Education. Education does matter, and I'm Antoine Womack, and I'm ready to serve come August 22nd.
All right, everybody, I think we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Yes, so first I want to thank you all for coming out and listening to our board candidates. Thank you to the board candidates. And Ms. Henderson also gave her regrets that she had to leave early. She was trying to attend a neighborhood association meeting. So we're going to take about 4